2 days to go until Super Tuesday, where there are primaries or caucuses in 12 states. And according to our CBS News Battleground tracker, things are looking good for the frontrunners. In Virginia, Donald Trump is at the top of the Republican field with 40%. Marco Rubio follows him with 27%, and Ted Cruz is in third at 22%. Georgia is also showing 40% for Trump. Ted Cruz is running second at 29%. Marco Rubio is at 22%. But in his home state of Texas, it's Ted Cruz who is up by 11 points over Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio is in third with 19%. John Kasich and Ben Carson are both much further behind in those three states. Last night, Hillary Clinton had a big win in South Carolina. She won a whopping 73% of the vote compared to 26% for Bernie Sanders. And in the Democratic race in our Super Tuesday Battleground tracker, Hillary Clinton is up over Bernie Sanders by 20 points in Virginia. She leads 59-39. In Texas, Clinton has 61% support from Democratic primary voters. Sanders has 37%. And finally, in Georgia, she is at 63% compared to Bernie Sanders at 35%. And we turn now to CBS News Director of Elections, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, let's start. Donald Trump is up everywhere in Texas. What have we learned new about his durability as a frontrunner?
Yeah, there's some signs here that what clearly started as a pushback against the establishment, against the Republican Party and politics as usual, is growing into something much more. Specifically, voters in Georgia, in Virginia, and in Texas all think that Donald Trump has the best chance now to win the general election. And also, they think that he has the most optimistic message of the remaining candidates. And that to me is a signal that this isn't just about, for them, voting against something, against politics as usual. It's a signal that they're voting for something. And that is, in politics, very powerful because that's a campaign that'll have legs.
Tuesday, we've got a bunch of states voting. One of them is Texas. Ted Cruz, we think, will do well in Texas. What can we learn about what's happening with Cruz in Texas and whether it translates to any other state outside of his home turf?
Yeah, it's not translating right now. In Texas, voters who know him say he has the most experience and say that he can best shake up politics. But Donald Trump owns those issues everywhere else. And even more than that, Ted Cruz, and you heard him in your interview, has been consistently making the argument that he's the conservative in the race. Well, he's winning that argument in all the states. They all overwhelmingly see him as the most conservative, but it's not enough, because he loses some of the voters who think he's most conservative to Trump. And also, voters are placing more importance on not just shaking up politics, but also fixing the economy. And Donald Trump owns those issues. So it's, on the political monopoly board, you want to own space, but you want to own the most valuable space. And that shake up politics in these states, that's the top thing.
And this is important, again, just to be clear, because it suggests if Cruz can't win outside of his home territory, he's not going to make inroads to stop Trump in other places.
Right. He may pick up delegates elsewhere, and he may hold serve in his home state, but right now he's trailing every place else.
All the candidates say, the remaining candidates who are not Donald Trump say, I want it to come down to a one-on-one race because then I'll have a shot against Donald Trump. In the numbers, do you see any evidence that if other candidates were to fall away, that enough voters would go to the remaining person who is the alternative to Trump that would actually change the state of things?
No. Donald Trump would get, when we ask people, if he doesn't get the nomination, who would you support? Donald Trump would get enough of Rubio voters, enough of Cruz's voters, not a majority, but enough, that added to his current standing would keep him as the front runner. So a consolidated race doesn't necessarily help whoever is left standing. And I think that's important, because if you figure Donald Trump is somewhere in the 30s, up around 40, he doesn't need that much to then get to a majority. We've always talked about how he has a ceiling. He still does. He still does. There's a lot of people who would not make him his second choice, but his ceiling isn't quite as low as we once thought.
All right, let's switch over to the Democratic race. Is it over?
Not yet, but Super Tuesday looks pretty good for Hillary Clinton. There's a couple of things going on. One is, we talked about the demographics of these southern states. You saw the big support that she gets among African American voters, and that's consistent across all these Super Tuesday states that we surveyed. People still say that Bernie Sanders is the honest candidate and is the principled candidate, but there's a similarity here almost to the Republican side, too. These are metrics that we thought going in would be winning ones, and they're not enough. So being principled and conservative, being principled is important. But where voters are going now for Senator Clinton's campaign is that they're seeing her as qualified, and they're seeing her as experienced. That's obviously her campaign message, and they're voting on that. So she's got big leads over Sanders on those metrics, and that's what's driving a lot of this.